On this episode of A Soul's Quest podcast, Omar and I are discussing the effectiveness and benefits of personality assessments. Stay tuned. So how have you been?
I have been well. How have you been?
Good. I'm a little tired for some reason.
Yeah.
I didn't sleep very good the night before, but last night I slept really well. But I've been yawning like all this afternoon. It might be the weather and the gloomy.
Probably.
We've been getting really intense thunderstorms and rains in the afternoons.
It's starting the summer.
It's good though because we really needed the rain.
We were pretty dry.
We were very dry.
Yeah.
But we are not going to be dry during this episode because what are we talking about?
We are talking about personality assessments.
Like that?
Yeah.
I like personality assessments. Oh, man.
I enjoy them too.
Yeah.
I enjoy them.
In fact, I like taking them like every once in a blue moon, kind of taking, re-examining or reevaluating or reassessing where I'm at.
CQI, baby.
Yeah. I like that.
Quality improvement. But yes.
And it's funny because I don't think that mostly I've stayed pretty consistent with my stuff, which is interesting.
Well, the interesting thing is that your personality is pretty set at an early age, right? It's just different aspects of that could sway in different directions, the weaknesses and the strengths.
Yeah, because the whole idea of personality, and we're going to get into it, is that you're creating a self-aware. Okay, let's not get into that because that's later.
Let's not get into that because, we're foreshadowing.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. But let me, as usual, start with a quote.
Yes.
This is by somebody who is unknown. I don't know who did this one, but
okay.
But it says that no personality type is better than one another, but a complete awareness about your personality helps in highlighting your key strengths, and that in turn helps in better life decisions.
Yes. Yeah.
Huge.
That's a pretty good quote, actually.
It is.
Because I think a lot of we are so conditioned, for better or worse, socially, right? To focus on certain things of achievement in our society or playing a certain role within our societies, right? That we don't look at really the innate qualities that we have as often as we should. So the more that we actually are attuned with who we are in our individual selves, our innate strengths, our innate talents, then we could align our lives a lot better.
Definitely.
And make better decisions that align with those those core values and assessments of who we are.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think
just
that's a very powerful quote.
Another tool, for discovering ourselves.
It's a very I think it's been a very important tool.
Yeah.
Particularly in my experience. Yes.
Yeah. One of the things I was thinking about is when please tell me that I didn't lose it. That's a bad sign. But I did lose it. Let's just move right along here.
Oh my God. I was like waiting. I was like getting ready to like jump right in, but I guess you lost it.
You said something and then you said something else and then I just lost what I was thinking, my train of thinking. Oh, that makes me so crazy. Okay.
You'll be back.
Well, anyways, so what are exactly personality assessments? A lot of people may not know what they are. And of course, we got my handy dandy.
You just have notes. You have notes. Everybody has notes.
Right. So personality assessments, kind of we've alluded to this, are used to help predict how people will respond in different situations.
Correct.
More specifically, they solicit information about a person's motivations, their preferences, their interests, their emotional makeup, and style of interacting with people in different situations.
Yes.
That's what I was going to talk about.
Okay.
When I've taken mine, one of the things that I've noticed is that it is like one of the things that came back from one of the tests that I took, which we'll talk about a little bit later, was that I found out and I discovered that I was an introvert. I had always thought for most of my life, I've lived half of my life, that something was wrong with me because I was like, why am I like exhausted now? And like, I'm just tired. I just don't want to be with anybody. So I'd go out with friends, even at a young age in my 20s, early 20s, and be able to go to the club, have a good time, drink, be home by like 3:00 in the morning, sleep for 2 hours, go to work. But that day when I would come home from work, I would shut down and not do anything for a whole 24 hours.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that because a lot of people get the misconception about introverts don't like people.
Oh,
right?
Very strong misconception.
Yeah, and the idea, it's not so much that you don't like people or you just don't want to be around people, but it takes a lot more energy
Yeah.
To be, because most people think that I'm an extrovert, right? Because I'm like, hey, how are you?
Mm-hmm.
And this has been like years of the turmoil inside that people don't see,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Of going out there and pushing myself to talk to people and pushing myself in those directions, right? But afterwards, I'm just exhausted.
I mean, it's crazy. And I thought something was wrong with me.
Yeah. And then it's like, and it's the energy that you're giving out.
Mm-hmm.
You're putting out a lot of energy. Whereas in contrast, an extrovert gains energy from the social interactions.
Yeah.
So a lot of people look at these things in the extreme polar way, and see it as, well, I'm this and then I'm that. But that's not the objective of it all. And I think it's one of the things that we're going to get into, like the dark side of personality test,
some
right? Because there are some limitations when it comes to that.
Definitely.
And some of the limitations in understanding things like that.
Yeah.
That it's not that you don't want to be around people.
No.
It's that you gain energy by being alone and being in nature.
Yeah. It's just the polar opposite. But it's funny because I have Dr. Peters, who was my dissertation chair.
Mm-hmm.
She recommended a book to me about introverts.
Mm-hmm.
And I admittedly, shame on me, I have not read it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, and you know what, maybe perhaps you can put it in the link, because it's a really good book for people to read about being an introvert.
That introvert's the superpower or something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Something, I don't remember, but yeah. But she recommended it. She said it was a really great read.
Yeah, I do have it on my queue, actually.
Do you?
To look into.
Yeah, we can link it. Anyways, so let's talk about personality assessments in terms of how they can be used within the organizational setting and also at the individual.
Let's start with the individual first. I know that we kind of like structured to talk about the business
That's
part,
fine.
but I always like to start with the individuals because again, going back to everything that we do at a Soul's Quest and everything that we do really starts with the individual, right? And then from there, the individual kind of like decides how role they play in an organization or how the organization aligns with an individual, because that could be problematic.
Yeah.
Right. So the first thing about a personality assessment that I think is super important, right, is that awareness of self, right? I don't believe, and I've used quite a few of these. I don't believe that these are end all be alls.
Oh no.
What they are is that they're a roadmap.
Correct.
Right. And there are guidelines to determine a parameter of kind of like where you are. But the first thing is that awareness of self, that self-awareness of knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses, understanding your weaknesses or your weak points, understanding where there are opportunities, understanding the things that you're more inclined to in comparison to the things that you're not. Because then that way, once you understand that and you put yourself in certain situations, then you become more, you have more information that aligns with who you are as a person. Right. And that's always going to be a better deal than if you're not aware. Right.
Well, I think what happens when you take these assessments and in terms of increasing your self-awareness, it helps you to understand because a personality assessment is used for determining how you're going to react in a situation, right? So not only in a social situation, but even with yourself, how you respond to certain things, how you handle certain things.
Correct.
And so one of the other things that is on the individual level is the stress. It's called stress management. Literally, I wrote it here because a lot of people don't understand, why is it that this bothers me so much?
Correct.
And a personality assessments gives us that general or generic, I would say, or general point of view, like you just said, as to what is easy to tolerate, what is not as easy to tolerate, what you like, what you don't like, and sort of gives you that guide or that roadmap in terms of, okay, so this is the reason why, you know what I mean?
And it's to understand precisely how in your individual self, when you come across interactions with other people. For instance, there's one personality test that we're going to go over, the big five. In one of those, I'm very high on agreeableness, right? And what happens with people like me, I'm very outgoing, I'm very like friendly, I'm always making jokes and trying to be light on the situations. And what I found out in my life is that some people in certain settings don't respond well to that.
Right.
And for a long time, I thought it was me.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like there's something wrong with me because I'm just trying to be who I am and trying to be friendly. But the reality is like the awareness that I have now is I could joke around with certain people and I could be lighthearted with certain people, but not everybody responds to that.
No.
Some people look at that as a sign of weakness, right? Some people look at it as a sign of like annoyance.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to be able to know those limits about yourself and then be able to gauge whether something aligns with you.
Exactly.
Right? You mentioned the introversion part, right? I'm in another one of the assessments, I'm an INFP. And then INFPs required a lot of alone time to process and to think, you know. And when I was in college, I have friends of mine make fun of me all the time, say, man, you just disappear and you go on this sabbaticals and nobody knows where you are. You just disappear. And a lot of the time it's like, man, that's not cool. And
I experienced that with you when I first met you.
Yeah. And it's not like I mean anything bad, but I just need that time for myself. And it's an extended period of time. And you know, and then being able to explain that to people, being able to create parameters about that. It's a very an important way for me once I understood that. To set parameters for my own self-care, for my own benefit, for my own well-being. So understanding
and to be able to express those boundaries and those limitations that you have in a way that people can understand it and say, okay, I get that. You know what I mean? Like, obviously I get that about you now, but it took a long time to understand what's this guy's problem? Why is he like, you know? You know,
and the thing is that you also have to be aware, you know, you have to be aware of those traits that your personality traits. I know, for instance, that I'm not a person that is going to have a whole lot of friends. Right? Because I need that separation. But the friends that I have, we could go weeks, we could go months without talking.
Those are the best kind of friends.
You know, but, you know, and we don't have to be talking all the time. But when we talk, we picked up exactly when we left off.
Yeah.
Right? And I have quite a few friends like that.
Yeah.
You know, and there's no judgment. That's an acceptance of who they are. There's an acceptance of who I am. And so those are the things that you have to understand about yourself. And then, but we also have the tendency to either swing it one way, saying, oh my God, I don't have any friends. I'm so horrible at this and that and the other. Or being too completely isolated that you actually forget and lose relationships. So you got to be able to be aware.
Yeah.
So that's one of the first things, the self-awareness part.
Right. I think that's the foundational part.
Yes.
Like, I think that's the most important part because that's where you're increasing that level of self-awareness, and then all the other stuff that comes from what you're exposed to in a personality assessment become a little bit more clear, and you know how to deal with those things.
Yeah.
For example, it helps with career planning.
Yes.
So that's a big one because a lot of people don't know what they want to do. And a personality assessment can help guide that decision making, if you will.
Absolutely.
And give you like an opportunity to make better decisions for yourself in terms of that.
There's a personality assessment actually that focuses on career paths based on your personality, right? And there's career clusters and there's things now, and this has become so much more advanced in the way that you pick a career, because a lot of studies have been going into it, and this is actually from the Department of DOE. I might actually put the link in the description because you could actually do that for your career and see which career fits best. You know, for instance, like when I did mine, it talks about the human services area, working with individuals, working with people, counseling, coaching, and all that stuff. That's kind of like the area that I've always been and felt comfortable with. In contrast, when I was in sales, I did it, but it wasn't really, and I was okay at it. I'm not going to say I was a great salesman, and I learned a lot from it, but it wasn't something that truly aligned with me as an individual.
It's so funny you say that because we, at the college, we offer students an opportunity to take an assessment.
Yes.
Right. And that assessment is for career planning. You know, what sort of like degree should I take, or what classes should I take that is going to align with what it is. And this girl had come to me for some advice because I do, I have a certification in career coaching. And she had said to me, I took this assessment. It says criminal justice. I'm not in any way, shape, or form interested in criminal justice. I said, why not? She goes, I don't want to be a cop.
Yeah.
And I said, wait a second. I said, there is way more stuff in the criminal justice system that you could do that might actually align with what you're interested in. And then, of course, there ensued a conversation. And she was just like, oh, my gosh, that's amazing. I didn't know there was all, And I'm like, yeah. So that's another thing for people not to be closed off to, okay, this is sort of what the assessment says that I'm interested in, but I don't want to do anything in that. But to be able to be open to all the options that are in that arena.
Precisely. And that's what I'm saying. That is a starting point. A personality test is a starting point and a good foundation for you to start exploring more aspects of who you are in the aspects of career,
right?
In the professional aspect, in the personal aspect, right? In the relationship aspects, what you are able to start like discerning and seeing, oh, okay, I didn't know that I was more prone to criminal justice,
right?
But there are so many other things. There are advocacy groups. There's
victim services,
lawyers,
attorneys, paralegals.
Services. Just like there's so much in that within that area, and the idea is that once you've determined that, then you can start exploring.
Correct.
Right. Yeah. And both on the personal level and then from the career planning part.
Definitely. And then finally, of course, one of the other aspects from the individual level is that personality assessments are really great in helping in terms of relationships.
Correct. Yeah.
And I don't mean just regular relationships, but I'm talking about intimate relationships too. Yeah. Because I know one of the things that we did when we took our personality test, I think I'm an INFJ.
Yep.
And it was just like,
ISFJ.
ISFJ. It was kind of like, well, that makes sense. Oh, okay, that makes sense. And you sort of have a little bit more compassion, so to speak, for the other person, because you're like, oh, I didn't know that. And here I was being judgmental or being rude or being.
So like this is one of the points of contentions that you and I go through, right? Because my personality as an NFP is a very, very feeler personality. So I'm sensitive in a lot of things, right? But you're more judging, so you have a very like sarcastic way to going about things, right? And to me, it's like, what the fuck? Yeah. Dude, don't come at me like that. It's
and
like,
the thing is that if you understand that, then you can navigate those waters a lot easier. It helps to improve your communication style. It helps and it just helps establish stronger relationships.
It does, because for instance, there's moments in which, I'm not in the mood for you to be sarcastic with me, right? And then I'm like, hey, this is not the time right now. I'm in the middle of something. And vice versa. So like, but there's moments in which we're just joking around and we're just being, sarcastic being sarcastic, playing around. But that's the idea of negotiating and allowing the other person based on understanding who they are. And it's not that it's like, well, I can't be with an introvert, or I can't be. It's about understanding and giving grace, right, to the individuals,
and also giving room for that person to sort of explore this newfound, this is what this is. You know what I mean? Like, I never thought that I was a judging person. I thought I'm just like everybody else. I, do things like but I realized how that could come across in certain situations, and that has helped sort of navigate or help to guide me in terms of my relationships with people in general,
And again, it's like the word judging, right? It's not that you're judging and being completely discriminatory, right? It's more that you are more analytical, more on the logical standpoint, when I'm more intuitive, right? Like I'm more perceive things a little bit different, and it's just a different way of viewing at the world, which in reality, actually, if you look at like, I'm trying to talk for I and we statements, right, from our experience, because that's something that everybody has to explore on their own, right? There's moments in which, because I'm very like, when we go on vacation, it's like, ooh, let's go this way. And you're like, well, I don't know, because it's like, well, this is the time and this is where we have to be. Like, you plan things out. You're very methodical when it comes to that part, and I'm a generalist.
And there are times now, because I know those things about you, that I'm just like, you know what? Yeah, let's do it.
And we kind of like just like, let's schedule it. It's like, okay, as long as we're back with this time, let's just go for it. So it's a lot of it's understanding that, right, and then being able to work with each other in a relationship to be able to do that. Yeah. So,
for the sake of time, I would know we have to move forward, but there's a lot of different types of personality assessments in people.
But to go back, we didn't talk about in careers, and you know, that's one of the things that we didn't talk about. We didn't, because you had an interesting quote about how businesses are using personality tests, right?
Well, it's a Forbes. What is it? A Forbes
article
report.
Okay,
and they said, sorry, we couldn't come up with a word. But they were saying, I was reading about it, and they were saying that between 60 to 70% of employers use pre-employment personality testing to vet job applicants and recruit the right fit.
Yes.
So these assessments are often used to gain insight into whether a prospect fits into the organization's culture. They help to identify whether an individual will perform well in certain areas or positions. And they also help identify what motivates and inspires employees, which is really significant because there are not a lot of organizations. Let me not say that. That's not true. There are a lot of organizations that want to create a culture that motivates and inspires creativity and autonomy and all these different things within their employees. So basically, the bottom line is that the purpose of the assessments is to minimize turnover, you know, and to have retention.
And I loved using personality tests at work. Like I did it with my employees because it allows me an insight into who they are as individuals. Because then once you understand who they are, once you understand your organizational mission, your values, your vision for the organization, right? And you understand the individuals, you know, values and personality in terms of the working environment. It's easier to marry the two and see exactly where they fit.
Of course.
Right? So I've done it in a couple of, I've used several, I used two in particular. I used the Myers-Briggs and the PI index, you know, to kind of like see exactly what my employers were and how do we help them put them in situations in which they were achieved, you know. And I always remember I had this one employee who was more on the artistic part, and some of the other employees had a hard time accepting it because he played a specific role that was pivotal to the overall vision of the organization, you know. But that meant that either myself or the rest of the team had to pick up slack in different areas. But we all did that for each other. This is the part about understanding and giving grace to people that allows us to kind of like work together better in an organization. You know, one of the guys and I read this and took it to the next level. And one of my previous steps, I wanted to take it to that point is Ray Dalio. He uses Myers-Briggs and he has cards for all of his employees to truly understand where they are, where they fit in, and how you maximize the individual in terms of the benefits to the organization, but also to make sure that person is aligned and happy in their positions, you know? So it is important for the individual to know themselves, for the organizations to hire and look for people and cater to those people so that your turnover rate is not astronomical. You know, we have the great resignation. We have people that leave jobs really, really quickly nowadays because there is not a sense of community, not a sense of them aligning their values and their life's objectives with their jobs. So we're seeing a lot of that, and we're going to continue to see that more with the advent of AI and technology advancing. So the that alignment is going to be necessary moving forward. So yeah, those aspects are things that are important for businesses, for organizations to actually like to do and to make a concerted effort to cater to those individuals and create that environment in which people understand each other, not just in a superficial level, but in a more in-depth. And I think, this is my own personal opinion, I think this is really what DEI should be doing, looking at personality traits and how personalities fit into an environment rather than other things. And that's just my personal opinion.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Can we talk about DEI?
Why wouldn't? Why?
No, I'm just saying it. Can we talk about DEI?
In terms of this?
Just in general.
No, I want to talk about DEI.
Okay. All right. So
sorry.
There are many types of personality assessments, but again, for the sake of time, that it's something that can be, there's obviously the Myers-Briggs, there's the big 5 personalities or Enneagram, the PI index, tons of them that are really great ones. Yeah. But with all of that said, as you alluded to earlier, that you'd stated earlier, there are limitations to personality assessments. Correct. And I think that's really important for both organizations and more importantly on the individual level, because I think a lot of people can define themselves very easily by just not sort of understanding what these limitations are. Yep. So some of the limitations that I found that were most important that I felt in terms of what I've done is, because I did research on this for my dissertation, so these were the ones that stood out for me, were the potential for bias. Yes. And so personality assessments can be influenced by desirability, bias, where individuals may answer questions in a way that makes them appear more favorable. And that can lead to inaccurate results. So you have to be honest with yourself. Yes, you have to be honest with yourself. Yeah, you have to be honest with yourself. If you want an accurate picture of where you're at and where you need to be and what you need to work on, your strengths, your weaknesses, you have to be honest. Yeah, I mean, and this is the thing about truly about self-help and that industry. And I think that the industry has done a really good job at holding people accountable. You know what I mean? Like, you have to be honest with yourself. It's like, don't take, even if it's at a job. And I know that when we go for a job, you want to get a job because you want to make money and all that stuff. But you have to be honest, because that's going to serve you better. It's going to align yourself with what you're looking to do in a much better, more fulfilling way. So definitely be honest. Yeah. And then there's also a limited predictive ability. So they're not always reliable, basically, bottom line, which kind of goes hand in hand with the potential for bias.
Yeah, like we're human beings, which might as well say that we're always evolving. We're always learning. We are always discovering different dimensions of ourselves. So to look at a personality test and say this is who I am, period, will be the wrong thing to do. Yeah. It's not the end all be all. You are fluid. Sure. You are just because you say that you are an introvert, it doesn't mean that you can't challenge yourself and push yourself to become more outgoing, to become more interact more with people. It just means that I remember reading this article, and he was the president, I think it was Arizona State or Arizona University, I don't remember 100% exactly, and he was like, he was the president of the university, and he's an ex-introvert, and he's like, I had to force myself, I had to challenge myself to be that outgoing individual, to work all those different things, and I was exhausted, but I was able to manage it. And it's that understanding. It doesn't mean that is who you are. It's a foundation. Correct. Look at it as that.
Yeah. Of course, there's the lack of context, which kind of goes with the other the prior ones that I just mentioned. Excuse me, but they don't account for all situational or cultural factors that can impact behavior and performance. So that's really, context is important as well.
It is. I think the one that I kind of like, it's more universal, and some people say that it has been discredited and all this stuff, is the MBTI, Myers-Briggs personality test, because it is kind of like based on a lot of Carl Jung's work on the archetypes of the collective unconscious, and I think that's a very humanistic approach of looking at the whole thing. So, but there are cultural differences. There's different cultures in which this type of look into this stuff, it's not really accepted. You have to be conform to a certain group and things of that nature and individuality. But that's the beautiful thing about living in America in particular, right? Because we are encouraged to be our own individual selves, which a lot of people are not encouraged to do that. And so that's one of the beauties that we are afforded here. Yeah. So we have to kind of like, be cognizant within the context. There's certain organizations too that are perhaps more conservative or more liberal than others, and that's something that you also have to keep in mind. Yeah, definitely.
There are ethical concerns. So the ethical concerns are definitely more maybe aligned with the organizational setting. Yeah, because if you're using the ethical concerns about using personality assessments to make employment decisions, that might be unfair and discriminate against a certain group of people, and that's not okay to do. It's unethical.
Yeah, this reminds me of movies like Divergent, movies like The Hunger Games, in which people are separated by different castes. It's almost like you separate because you have the dangers of taking this to a point in which you could create it into the different caste systems.
Oh yeah,
right. And
if you wanted to.
So
definitely.
if you wanted to. So again, it's like it's with everything else.
Right.
With everything else, it has the potentiality to swing in the opposite, in the polar opposites. You know.
So as long as you're cognizant of that, then and you're using it for the right reasons, then.
And both from individuals and from an organizational standpoint, it's the intent that matters, right? For the individuals, is to expand your self-awareness, to become. To continue to grow as an individual, to continue to expand and experience new dimensions of being, right? And for organizations is to be able to streamline your processes, to maximize the efforts that are going into, and then to create a workforce and an environment in which your employees who are your major expense. Who is the ones that cost you the most, because you got to constantly hiring is not cheap, advertising is not cheap. To put an intent to utilize that process, that effort, to get a better return for your investment. You know,
exactly.
Yeah.
And then finally, there's the overemphasis on individual traits, meaning if you place too much emphasis on individual traits rather than considering the broader context of a person's life and experiences, that can be dangerous as well.
Correct.
Yeah. So it's again, the intent, you know what I mean? Actually, there was another one. It's a limited scope, which is not capturing the full range of the person's traits and individuals. It kind of goes together, you know?
Yeah. And again, it's like, these are foundational things.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's that make up a foundation of a person, but individuals have different exposure to experiences, right? Different experiences that bring out different stimuli, different ways of relating to the world, you know, and so all that stuff, it's all in there. Their biases, their opinions about certain situations. So you have all that stuff in there. So you know, a personality test is not going to be able to give you all that scope of that. But it gives you the opportunity to understand at the core who the individual is. And then you could choose whether or not you want to work with it for that, to enhance that core and minimize whatever negative aspects or enhance the positive aspects that person has developed.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's pretty much the beauty of these things.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I agree. Well, so today we talked about personality assessments.
Yes, we have.
And the benefits of personality assessments as tools for our quest. Right?
Correct.
So we have developed 5 strategies for effectively using personality assessments for both the individual and the organization.
Correct.
So the first one is to choose the right assessment for the job.
Correct.
So different personality assessments are designed to measure different aspects of personality. It's important to choose the right assessment for the purpose you have in mind. That's the intent part that we were just talking about. Intent. So for example, the Myers-Briggs or the MBTI is often used for team building and personal growth. And while the Big 5 personality traits assessment is commonly used for hiring and career development. So it's really important to make sure that you're choosing the right assessment for the purposes of, or the intent. Same thing for personal uses. You know, I think the MBTI is a great one. The Enneagram is a really great one for exploring those traits about ourselves. Most of them are for the individual as well as the organizational level. But anyway.
Use assessments in conjunction with other tools. Personality assessments should be used in conjunction with other tools and methods, such as interviews and work samples, to ensure a comprehensive and accurate picture of the candidate. Using multiple methods will provide a more complete understanding of an individual's strengths and their weaknesses.
Yes. The third strategy is to understand the limitations of assessments, but we've already gone in depth about that, so we don't really need to talk too much more about that one. But to understand that there are limitations and that they can be dangerous if it's not used appropriately.
Okay. I mean, the fourth one is to provide feedback to participants. Personality assessments can be a powerful tool for personal and professional growth. However, in order to maximize the benefits, it's important to provide feedback to the participants. This feedback should be specific and actionable and should focus on areas where the individual can improve. And that's the same thing that you do if you were a manager or as an individual. You know, you could partner up with a friend or a coach or someone
or
like
a significant other or whatnot.
That could help you align what you're seeing with the steps that you're trying to take in your life.
Definitely. And finally, incorporating assessments into a broader, this is really important, I think, into a broader development strategy. So they should be viewed as a part of a broader development strategy. For example, an organization can use personality assessments to identify areas where employees need training or development. So they can offer more training and more development and be supportive in that way. And they can incorporate assessments into a broader strategy in terms of getting the most out of the tools that they have or finding the resources for their employees to develop them further.
Yeah.
So I think that those are pretty much the 5 strategies that are really good for an individual's quest in realizing themselves. We hope you enjoyed this video. Comment below with your thoughts and ideas, and remember to stay connected by sharing and subscribing.